Hey guys, it's Dan. Welcome back. This is going to be one of a series of reviews I'm going to do in which I only have a single sprue from the sets. So some might call it cheating, but the truth is I really just don't need an influx of like hundreds of models at the moment. And in fact, the video that I mentioned in my prior video that I'm going to be releasing shortly shows pretty much every model in my collection, and you'll see there why I don't need boxes and boxes of miniatures at the moment. I do intend to pick up, speaking of which, I do intend to pick up the medieval releases from both Victrix and Wargames Atlantic that should be due a little bit later this fall. But in the short term, I wanted to keep providing some review content because I enjoy doing it and it does seem to be well received. So as I said, I've picked up several sprues from kits where it's just a single sprue repeated multiple times, no command sprue, and Wargames Atlantic's cases, no bases even. So I felt that in choosing kind of tactically those kinds of kits, I'd be able to put together some reviews for you that I don't feel anything is lost by not having the physical box itself. So let's kick things off here with boxers from Wargames Atlantic's Imperial Conquest line. As the name implies, this is going to be like late 19th century, early 20th century Chinese peasants or working class people. In this particular case, kind of a niche subject, very cool that they're covering this. That's another thing that I like about Wargames Atlantic, both in terms of the physical media they produce, like the physical boxes, but also the digital sculpts that they put out. They really do cover a lot of kind of gaps within the wargaming hobby. So this is no different. Box art effective as usual. Again, this is just a printout. I don't have the physical box, but $34.95 is the MSRP here in the States, or at least on the website. You can get different prices from different retailers. What is important to note, though, as it's stated just on the front of the box, it's also on the website, they're very clear about it, but that they experiment, I would say, with different model counts. So some of them, like this one, comes with 30 models. I would say that's their standard. However, some come with more, like their Afghan warriors, also from the Imperial Conquest line, come with 40. And then some now come with 24, like the Conquistadors come with 24, and the Foot Knights that we looked at from the Baron's War line also come with 24. So just important when you're picking up a set from them. Again, they're all around that price point of like $34.95, except for stuff that they produce on behalf of other miniature manufacturers, like the Reptilian Overlords, the Corps War, Citizens of Rome, stuff that they are producing on behalf of other companies. Those are usually like $5 more expensive, like $39.95. But as I mentioned, just make sure you know how many miniatures you're getting just by looking at either the website or the box art itself. So 30 miniatures in the set, so 5 models per sprue, 6 sprues. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, there's no bases in this set. There's no command sprue or anything like that. If you pick up the box, you're going to get the physical box to the printout I just showed, but you're going to have 6 of this sprue. So let's take a look, a quick overview shot here, and then we'll look at some of these details more closely here. So straight away, as I've mentioned maybe in my prior Wargames Atlantic reviews, very crisp sculpts, almost no mold lines. And I say that as somebody who was just cleaning up mold lines, assembling miniatures from a different manufacturer, that I'm always really impressed with Wargames Atlantic and their kind of production standards. Again, I don't know what it is that they do, but there are almost never any mold lines on their sets. So we'll take a look at bodies here, as we typically do. Another, like, it's kind of a weird quirk, but some bits are angled one direction, some come back the other. I'm sure just, again, from a layout standpoint, you have to do it that way, but like the heads are, you got to look at them this way, and then the bodies are this way. So there's no real clear, like, front of the sprue that way, but we'll take a look at the bodies here. So a mix of poses, all of them kind of in like action stances, but a cool collection of kind of peasanty and religious garb here. And again, some of them are in like running poses, some of them are in standing, but kind of, again, action standing poses, like they're either firing or readying a weapon of some kind. And great sculpting on like the robes that you can see here. Everybody's got lots of flowing robes with sashes in some cases. But by and large, just a really cool collection of outfits. And then moving on to heads. Again, I mentioned all the heads are up at the top there. I'm counting looks like 13 heads. And then, so 7 of them, again, to 5 bodies, but 7 of them have either minimal headwear or no headwear. Some of them have these wraps, and then all of them are, it looks like, tied to these ponytails, which would be affixed, yeah, to the back of the heads here. So good sculpting, good detail. As you can see here, and especially kind of the really small, I don't know why camera's going out of focus there, especially the small details here on the ponytails all look really good. And then over on the left side of the sprue here, we've got some more heads, this time with various headwear. Flip it over here. And then in theory, you could, yeah, it looks like there's space for it too. You could attach these ponytails, and I apologize, I'm sure there's a formal name for it, not just a ponytail as we call it here in the States. But it looks like they can be attached here as well to the back of these heads. So 5 bodies, you've got, again, 8 actually, of these hair attachments that can go on the back of any of these heads. So different angles, you can see they're flowing in different directions. So good combination of head bits there to make pretty much whatever you need. In terms of weapons, I'll break them up. There's some firearms and there's some close combat weapons. Again, this is like late 19th century. And the weaponry suggests that as well. So up here you've got 2 pole arms. There's actually really 5 in total pole arms. You've got this kind of pitchfork looking thing here, a spear, these 2 glaives. Again, I apologize, I don't know the Chinese names for them. And then another spear here. So 2 spears, one is slightly larger than the other, and one looks like held in a single hand, whereas the other one looks like it's designed to be held in 2. And both of them, if you go in close, you can see that there's like ridges for bamboo, which is just a cool, neat little touch. So again, 5 pole arms. And then hand weapons, you've got kind of a mix of these short fighting swords, which looks like they could be, like, one model could be holding these in 2 hands, right? Like two single-handed weapons. But there's a good mix of arms here that are not holding anything, so you could theoretically mix these up on different models. So like this is an empty right hand that could go with this left hand that's holding a sword, and same thing here. This right hand holding a sword, you could go with this empty left hand, or you could mix them up. You could have one guy that's just bare knuckle boxing if you like. And then you've got a cleaver down here, which is cool. And then a sword that's down here. And it looks like that's it for the hand weapons. And then in terms of firearms, I count 3, which again makes sense in terms of subject matter. That this was not like a professionally armed military, and you know, guns would have been a little bit more difficult to get a hold of. So it makes sense that, like, from a ratio standpoint, you'd have really 2 rifles and 1 pistol to 5 bodies. But just something to be aware of, that if you're looking to arm all of these guys with firearms, you can't do that from this kit alone. But you see you've got a couple of bolt-action rifles here of various styles. And I'm sure that's meant to represent a specific make and model. They look like they're actually slightly different from one another. I don't know if that's like a Mosin Nagant or if that's supposed to be some kind of variant of an Enfield. But there you go. Some turn of the century bolt-action rifle. Both looks like have magazines. And then you've got a kind of Luger-style pistol. I'm sure it's not, but it looks like it. And then in terms of accessories... Oh, I'm sorry, there's actually one more head hidden down here. Look at that. I'm sure some of you were shouting at your TV a minute ago. But there you go. You got one more head down here. So there's actually 14 heads to 5 bodies, which is an excellent ratio. Like, again, 2 to 1 is what I would consider good. But yeah, that's almost 3 to 1, which is fantastic. And then there's accessory bits. You've got this sword scabbard down here, which looks like it's supposed to be a sheathed version of this sword that we see over here. And then you've got this shield option down here. Back of it is sculpted too, which you know I like to see. And yeah, by and large, I think this is a very effective kit. I'm going to throw some of these together for you. In fact, I'll throw them all together because we have 5, and we'll take a look at how the assembled models kind of stack up. But just general thoughts, again, sculpting is fantastic. The head options, the body, the poses are great. I'm glad to see that they didn't have detached torsos from legs as we've seen on some Wargames Atlantic kits. Again, the only point of disappointment might be the lack of more firearm options. And generally, it looks like these are mostly meant to be armed with pole arms because there's not even that many hand weapon options. But again, I'm going to throw some of these together and we'll take a look at how they look all built up. All right, here we go. So I think they turned out pretty cool. And in fact, in terms of like leftover stuff on the sprues, there's still plenty of bits left over from our 5 models that we've assembled. And let me show you them here one at a time. But I think that, again, in terms of sculpting, fit of arms to bodies, I think everything looks really, really great. The braids turned out to be a lot less fiddly than I feared that they were or would be. But you can see you can make some really dynamic poses with these guys. As I mentioned, cool collection of weapons, either improvised weapons or military weapons. And a nice variety of poses and options there. And because they're flowing robes, I thought that they would make for some cool kit bash potential. So I added a Victrix Persian archer head, and this is Perry Miniatures Mercenaries, the musket arms. So I made some kind of, I don't know, like Ottoman assassin, like Renaissance era assassin, but I thought it was convincing enough just because, again, when you're dealing with flowing robes, you can do a lot with it. In terms of scale, they scale up great, certainly with their other Wargames Atlantic stuff. This is from their Blood Oaths Irish range on the left. And then let's do a Foot Knight from their Baron's War line. And they also scale up well with Warlord. It's a Warlord Dacian. And Victrix. It's a Victrix Viking. And then even Perry Miniatures, which are generally a little bit smaller in terms of like proportions. In terms of like the height of the model, though, everything is right on target. So yeah, another fantastic offering from Wargames Atlantic. Really cool that they're covering, as I mentioned at the outset, kind of stuff that typically gets overlooked. And I'm even impressed that they went with a plastic box for this set where, you know, they might be tempted to just put it out as like a 3D offering. But yeah, the only criticism of the kit, to be honest, is like maybe one more firearm would have been cool, or maybe like one more improvised weapon like a shovel or a pickaxe or something like that would have been cool if you're just trying to represent peasants. But I really think this is a neat subject matter for them to cover, and I think it's well executed. The only other note, actually, and I meant to mention this even back on my Foot Knights video, I just keep forgetting to do so. It's not a point against it at all. It's just something to be aware of. But that these figures, this sprue, comes with a lot of contact points. So you can see like where the bodies came off here. That each of the bodies had 5 points of contact. And I would say like most manufacturers, like 3 is pretty common. But it's 5 in every single instance here on this sprue. And indeed, every Wargames Atlantic kit usually comes with like 4 or 5 attachment points. I think that might be part of their secret to why there are so few mold lines on these figures. Because like, look, I mean, I didn't clean these up at all. And there are no mold lines, or almost like maybe someone like the head. But there are basically no mold lines on this figure, right? You can see where the attachment points were, like here, and then like on the bottom, what have you. So it makes it a little bit more time consuming to physically remove them from the sprue, and you have to cut off the little tabs where they were removed. But again, if that's the trade-off for not having to scrape mold lines off of the side of a model with an X-Acto knife, then I will take that every day of the week. So anyway, as I said, another great offering from Wargames Atlantic. I'm going to have a couple more reviews coming up, 2 more from Wargames Atlantic, 1 from Oathmark, and then again, some other painting content, some other surprise stuff for you. So stay tuned for all that. But in the meantime, appreciate you dropping by as ever. And until next time, happy gaming.